I'm here at ACPA's Institute on the Curricular Approach, and just this morning I got a chance to do a centering experience for all of the participants where I got to talk about the history of the curricular approach, some foundations, some components, and some evolutions of a curricular approach. One of the things I wanted to share was some ways we can stay unstuck no matter where we are at with our curricular approach. We have folks here who are considering it, folks who are launching, and folks who are building, and folks leading at many years out at strategic directions. So today I want to share 16 tips for how you can stay unstuck with your curricular approach. We'll keep that broken down into launching, building, and advancing. When we think about launching your curricular approach, this is when we're just getting started. 3 tips to staying unstuck. One is assess where you're at. Are you just thinking about this, or are you deciding and ready to launch? Have you created learning aims but never really got going with it and you need to relaunch? Where are you at and where are you headed? Another thing we can think about is making sure we get buy-in and support and ownership. A lot of folks bring their teams to ICA to do that, and that's a great way to do that. But some can't bring all of their team, and the folks who come here have a hard time kind of championing the curricular approach on behalf of everybody. So a lot of times I work with campuses to do a 90-minute session virtually or in person on the foundations of a curricular approach to get everyone on board. And then from there, we go into launch and do their dig and create their learning aims and then begin to create educational plans, assessment, and so on. So whether you're using ICA or a campus-based way, make sure that you're getting buy-in, support, and ownership. And the third tip for staying unstuck at the launch phase is make sure you don't spend forever refining, critiquing, analyzing your learning aims. You want to do a great dig. You want to do that efficiently and come up with your ed priority, your goals, your outcomes, your narratives, and your rubrics. But some folks get tempted to stay in arguing about words for way too long. Now, these words are really important, so you want to get them right, and you want to discuss them. But you can't take months or years debating between wellness or well-being, debating whether it should be community or community engagement, deciding whether conflict resolution should be in community or in our relationship learning goal. Do your best thinking, move forward, and a lot of clarity will come as you go to the implementation stage. Now, for those of you who have launched your curricular approach and are in the building, you might be on year 1, more likely year 2, 3, 4, 5, something like that. A few things that I find can help people stay unstuck. The first one is making sure you're not creating program level, department level, or office level learning goals and learning outcomes. If you have a divisional approach, you want one set of learning aims for everyone in the division or your institution. And then you want micro level for each strategy, each workshop, each video, each appointment. What you don't want is a meso or middle level of learning goals and learning outcomes for the program, function, office, or department. A lot of times we do this as a division, and then departmental leaders feel like they have to do that at their level, and they don't. That middle level just gets in the way. Save yourself the time, save yourself the obstacle. The second way we can stay unstuck is don't stop at learning aims. Learning aims are great. They provide our collective, co-created, shared vision, but then we need to create educational plans to help us get there. Just having learning aims and not doing your educational plan is like having a mission, vision, values retreat and then never doing the implementation. It's just words on a page, looks great, but you're not moving things forward. So don't stop at learning aims, move into the educational plans. Another way that people get stuck is they jump into facilitation guides before they've really done their educational plans. Now, educational plans are like the syllabi for the course. We map out the whole course, the whole function, sequencing, what are our strategies, what are the learning outcomes we're working on. Once we've done all that mapping and sequencing especially, then we can jump into facilitation guides. But some of us jump to facilitation guides too soon because it's concrete and we're executors and we like the day-to-day, and it certainly is at that level. But if you don't do the big picture thinking before you move into the day-to-day, you can waste a lot of time, energy, and effort creating facilitation guides that you're going to use in a completely different way or maybe not use at all. So make sure you work on your educational plans, think about the big picture, and then get to your facilitation guides. Another way to stay unstuck is remembering that this is a lens to your work, not in addition to your work. All of us are too busy. We don't need another thing to add to our plate. This is something that actually is our plate. Our colleague Erin Simpson at the University of Oklahoma talks about a curricular approach being the plate that helps organize what's on your plate. Let this be a new lens to your work, not in addition to your work. And be sure you're letting go of ego. your own ego, and also your office and department ego. When we're focused on our ego, a curricular approach, assessment, review, all of these things can be frightening and scary. We might find out we messed up. But when we're truly student-centered, we let all of that go and really get focused on students. And then all of those things, assessment, feedback, review, is really exciting because it helps us learn how to do better for our students. We can also go slowly and imperfectly and learn. Sometimes it's tempting to put your curricular approach on hold for a global pandemic or a change in leadership, or we've got a whole bunch of new positions, or the new president just launched a new strategic plan. And there's always one of these things happening. And so don't stop, don't pause, don't take a time out on your curricular approach. You might slow things down. You might go very, very slowly. But as long as you're moving forward in some cadence, you're going to learn a lot, you're going to keep some momentum, and then when you really are ready, you're going to be off and running. Whereas folks who really take a pause or a time out, they have to go back and restart all over again. So go slowly and imperfectly and learn along the way. Another tip is to lead with resistance. With a curricular approach in any major change, you're going to have resistance. And resistance is actually a sign of progress. If we weren't making progress, if things weren't shifting, if they weren't changing, then there wouldn't be any reason for there to be resistance. But many of us have resistance to things that are new because we as humans love what we're familiar with. And so when that resistance comes up, don't feel like you failed or messed up or made a horrible mistake. This is a part of the process, and engage with it. And I really recommend unbraiding that resistance. Resistance often looks like one thing, but the roots behind why people are resistant might be many different things. They might not be confident they can do this. They might not have the competence. They might not have the tools, the terminology, or the technology, or the skills to do this. They might honestly not have the time. Now, everybody says they don't have the time, and some people are procrastinating, and some that's really true. So how can we unbraid the different forms of resistance and lead with it? See it as something to help you move forward in a natural part of your evolution process. Learn from the wilderness. Sometimes our curricular approach is not where we would like it to be, and we end up having a goal or an outcome, and people are just doing whatever. We say to student leaders or student employees, say, this is the goal, this is the outcome, whatever you think, just do whatever you think is best. That's not really a curricular approach, but that's sometimes where we're at. And what is helpful if you're in that wilderness where things are just going on is to pay attention. What is working? What is not working? And ideally, after a year of student staff really innovating and coming up with some great ideas and some terrible ideas, you can narrow that down to maybe 7 or 8 different options that people get to choose from next year. This is what we did last year. Here are some good options, kind of a menu to choose from. Then hopefully the next year you find that there's 2 or 3 of those that work way better than others. And maybe the next year there's one that really is having a greater impact from the assessment of student learning and the staff feedback. And that's the one you want to systematize in your true curricular approach. And finally, learn from all 3 levels of leadership. You want to make sure you have a champion. This might be your vice president or other leader who is championing a curricular approach at every meeting, moment throughout the year. They're speaking about it, they're championing it. And then you want what I call air traffic control, which usually are about 3 people who are not doing all of the curriculum, but they're making sure that everybody else is doing. They're setting a schedule, setting timelines, setting assessment, letting people know when they're past a deadline, holding people accountable. This air traffic control is at the strategic level, making sure that everything strategically is moving along. And then you want a level of leadership at the functional level. This is often your associate director of a department. It's kind of the internal leader. Sometimes it's a director, but it's the internal leader of the organization who helps that office, program, or department make sure that their curricular approach is humming along. They're building this part, adding these parts, doing their assessment, learning from it, looking at what just happened, looking at what is about to happen, and continuing to move that. So make sure you have a champion, strategic level, your air traffic control, and your functional level, your internal leader in your office, unit, or department. 4 more tips for staying unstuck, and these are really for the advanced people. So if you're just getting started, ignore these. They're going to be too much too soon and more than you're ready for. The first tip is to clarify the different curricular approach products, processes, and mindsets. Sometimes this all gets braided together, particularly here at the Institute, where we're really trying to give a lot of information in a short amount of time. But separate out what are the processes we need to be following, what are the products we're going to be creating, and what are the mindsets we need to move our organization to as we move to a learning organization. The second one is don't let your curriculum get in the way of your curricular approach. A curricular approach is a systemic way of thinking about student learning, clear outcomes, and aligning our day-to-day actions. Sometimes we become so in love with our educational plan, with this facilitation guide, with this event, with this process, that we become wedded to that rather than the big picture approach. So don't let your curriculum get in the way of leading and thinking and reassessing through a curricular approach. And assess where you're at. Now, I started with assess where you're at if you're launching, but if you're advancing, where are you at? I have 6 stages for a curricular approach. There's probably many more than that, but looking at that might help you see where are you at and how do you want to move forward. It's not a binary of we're not doing a curricular approach and now we are. There's a whole journey, a whole continuum, a whole pathway. And knowing where you are can help you identify where you want to move to next, rather than where you are and then an unrealistic jump in your progress. So where are you and how do you move your people, your organization, your processes, your products, and your mindsets forward? And finally, keep the momentum going. I talk about the 5 R's of maintaining momentum. A renewal, where you're renewing this for new staff who have been there. A refresh, or maybe you're rethinking about things. Redoing your learning aims. A retreat where you're setting aside time to work on this. You might do a review, internal or external, and then reports. Those are the 5 R's. All of these can help you maintain your momentum. So think about where you're at, what you need, and how you want to keep advancing your curricular approach. We heard from folks this morning who are in their 4th iteration in 12 years, their 5th iteration in 8 years. That's a very natural, normal part of the process. So if you feel like you need to develop a new iteration, probably doing things just right. I had the opportunity this morning to talk with all of the participants at the Institute on the Curricular Approach about the foundations and the basics, the history, the foundations, the fundamentals, the components, and the evolutions. I'm really excited to be able to share with you in this video 16 tips for advancing your curricular approach wherever you are, so you're staying unstuck and keeping moving, whether you're just getting ready to launch, whether you're building, or you're advancing your curricular approach. I've worked with more than 100 different institutions to launch their curricular approach. I work with some of those institutions in an ongoing way to continue to support their development. I love learning with and from them. And if I can support you in your curricular approach, let's connect.